what's making me hopeful is, certainly for the new year, is something that we have come up with between me and Nic. We have developed this thing, and I can't say what it is because we're not properly telling everybody in the whole world until the next episode comes out on the 1st of December. But we have been looking towards the future.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Is the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the gloves?
A second wave is...
We all need some good news.
This is a message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Halling. Nic Redman and Leah Marks are the co-hosts and creators of the longest-running, most listened to and reviewed voiceover podcast in the UK, the Voiceover Social, which won the Inspiration Award at this year's One Voice Awards and was also runner-up in the 2021 International Women's Podcast Awards, a 2021 British Podcasts Awards Nominee, a finalist in the 2021 Podcasting for Business Awards, and a SOVAS Arts Awards Nominee. Separately, they are a treasure trove of talent. Originally hailing from Manchester, England, Leah Marks has amassed quite the voiceover career, including appearances in several Radio 4 plays, TV commercials, news reporter on BBC Radio Manchester, and is the voice of the BBC Civilization's augmented reality app, which has been downloaded 250,000 times. Nic Redman is a native of Northern Ireland and an internationally successful voiceover artist, podcaster, and voice accent coach. She has taught voice accents and VO at many of the major drama schools in the UK. She is the founder of Voice and Accent Hub Group on Facebook, created to offer tailored voice and accent coaching to specific groups of voice users, and writes and hosts the Voice Coach podcast, offering even more in spoken voice training. Let's meet this dynamic duo by welcoming Leah Marks and Nic Redman to 19 Stories.
I've never heard them all in that row before. That's so cool. Oh, it's a big list.
How exciting.
Well done us. Well done, Leah.
Oh, well, we've done
Well
very
done,
well,
you.
actually.
Yes, and there's so much more that you've both done individually that we're going to mention later on. But I want to thank you, Nic and Leah, for joining me, especially since it is your supper/dinner time. And I've already heard from Nic in our pre-interview banter that she's had candy, sweets. I haven't heard from you, Leah, what you've munched on.
I made a smoked cod, potato, and leek stew yesterday, so there's a bit left of that. And the rest of my family, they had some of the mushroom risotto with a poached egg on top that I made the day before that was left over as well.
Can I just say, I didn't have sweets and chocolate from my tea, though. I did have a normal tea first. Before everyone's all like, hang on, Nic has candy for a tea and Leah has mushroom risotto with an egg on. Like, how are they even friends?
Okay, can you explain for our American audiences, when you say tea, you're really meaning the evening dinner?
Yeah.
One's evening meal, yes.
Meal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the very north of England way of saying what you've had for your final meal. Let's call it final meal of the day, but we all know there's a secret extra meal just before you go to bed.
Yeah, the things in the back of the fridge meal.
Tea before your lunch, and then
tea
after your lunch, and then tea.
Some more tea. And then, what should we do? We've got 10 minutes. Should we have another tea?
We'll just have a little tea.
For sure.
A little tea. I was alienated. I felt very alienated for a very long time because I didn't drink tea. And I still don't drink tea. And I've come to terms with it now. But I realised the problem was that I didn't actually like milk. So now I've taken milk out of the equation. I'm like, I'll have an Earl Grey with a slice of lemon, or perhaps one of those lovely green teas one sees in the shops. And I feel better now.
Which is actually worse than not drinking tea at all, I think.
just
having
no milk.
Having a real real posh tea.
Oh yeah. I still can't join in, but now I just think I'm better than everybody else, which is different.
Well, do you actually have? Because I was going to say I did something sacrilegious based on what you teach, Nic. I had a peppermint mocha latte this morning, and I just thought with whipped cream, and I thought that's terrible. Who does that before?
I'm really excited about this because I know vaguely what Nic's about to say, and it makes me really, really happy. Okay, Nic, are you ready?
Okay, go for it.
Doesn't if it doesn't affect you, it doesn't matter. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it affects me.
For the listeners at home, Cheryl does have to keep stopping the recording every 4 seconds to hike up a big bogey, out of her throat from all that dairy. Shame on you, you voice professional. No, listen, I mean, everybody's different. There's so many kind of well-trodden, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, do that, do that, do that in terms of vocal health. If you can down mocha, foca, woka, whatever it was you had, with a load of cream on the top before you record, happy days. Doesn't matter. Like, caffeine does not dehydrate you in the way that people seem to think it does. You'd have to drink a lot of it for it to actually affect your voice. It's still fluid, so it still counts as systemic hydration. The dairy thing is like personal. I just had some chocolate and I'm not too...
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I'll need to put the right one and literally do that. Everybody's different, Cheryl, so you know what? I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you for taking a risk.
Thank you very much. And it was a risk because when I thought of who I was going to be talking with, the both of you, I just thought, well, you know, we'll just let my freak flag fly and see what happens. So I was going to say, how are you doing? But it seems like you're doing fine. You are here with your wonderful effervescence and energy, and it's such a delight to have you here. So, and I realized in your opening, one of the things that I didn't mention is that you're also both mothers. So the fact that you're here with everything else you got going on.
Yes, the children are all just fending for themselves.
You're going to go out
with the rest of the sweets that I didn't eat. Bouncing around the living room, playing with some knives and stuff, you know.
Oh my gosh.
To be honest with you,
yeah,
it's a relief.
Good.
It's a relief to be here.
Good.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I've got a very important business meeting, interview meeting to go
business
to.
meeting.
Goodbye.
Did I say poo in it? Sure. Did I say bogey? Sure.
There you go. We've covered the basis. Anything else you want to get out there? That's fine. Hey, so before we talk about the VO Social and all of the awards and nominations it's gathering, would you mind telling the story that you shared both in your pilot episode and with me and my podcasting colleagues, Ann Ganguza and Jody Krangle, in our Voices in Podcasting Clubhouse room, of how a misplaced punctuation was responsible for bringing you together?
I believe this one is mine.
This is on you, Bibs. I can do the dairy and the caffeine.
I talk about where anybody thinks they might want to put an apostrophe. So it's about 10 years ago, I was starting to think about being a voiceover professionally. I was on lots of different Facebook groups and I was poking around on websites and trying to find any kind of training that I could find of any kind in any place at all. And I noticed that Nic kept popping up in these Facebook forums, making interesting comments, asking interesting questions, joke. And she seemed like an interesting person, so I thought I'd find out more about her. I went to her website and was absolutely disgusted, Cheryl, I don't mind saying, to find there was an apostrophe extremely far removed from where it ought to be. And so I thought I would email her. I sent her a little email saying, hi, it's really nice to get to know you on Facebook, and do you know that there's an apostrophe really out of place on your website? And miraculously, instead of telling me to F off or just blanking me, which would have been the safest, I think, given the circumstances thing to do, she just invited me to a
lonely was
party.
I at that point in my life? Do you want to come and hang out?
So I went. I said, come to a voiceover party I've been going to. And so I went along and we hit it off, and then it just so happened that we moved up to the north of England around about the same time, within sort of weeks of each other actually. And so we decided to replicate a voiceover party we've been going to down south, up north, essentially a free do.
We love a do.
In a room above a pub. Just invite all the voiceovers we could find across like Yorkshire, Lancashire, Merseyside, the North East, like everywhere, and bring them all to one room. And it took ages and ages for people to realise that we weren't just like mad,
and that we weren't going to leave them alone either,
and instead genuinely yeah, exactly, we were not going to give up, and eventually that turned into a whole social event that happened every few months. And to try and promote that, we were just sort of wandering around the streets of Manchester, recording ourselves talking about how people ought to come and meet us in the pub, and then just posting that on SoundCloud, which people were responding to kind of okay. We're getting maybe 20 listeners to our absolute nothing. And then we started to escalate it a little bit. We started voxing the people at the pubs.
Wait, you started what?
These were like pro voiceovers who were coming along. Oh yeah, voxing. So we would ask one question to lots of people and record all their answers and compile them in a little montage. Where does that come from? It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a radio thing, I think. And then Vox Pops, yeah. So we would ask them things like, who's the biggest brand you've worked for, and what is your favourite voiceover story? What's your most ludicrous voiceover story? That was a good one. We got some quite terrifying stories out of that, actually. And then we started interviewing people, and then the whole thing just sort of escalated and got a bit out of control, and got
all
to the
because
kind
of a
extravaganza
comma
that it's become now,
or something,
which was very gracious of you, Nic, because I have seen things on websites and I'm like, that's really egregious. Should I write them, or are they going to tell me to? So that's how the VO Social podcast came about. Then you're actually recording your gatherings, right?
Yeah, recording ourselves talking about the gatherings, then recording people at the gatherings, then recording people who sometimes come to the gatherings but at their own homes, and then just sort of trying to work out who we wanted to speak to that we thought that the people who'd started listening to us on a regular basis would be interested in hearing from. And then we stopped thinking about people, instead started thinking about topics. And going into like great depth about various things. So, for example, like the history of the Mid-Atlantic accent was a really interesting one. We spoke to lots of different experts, people who use the Mid-Atlantic accent for their work, what sort of thing it might be useful for, and kind of like the tracked what it had been and what it has become now, using he's the accent expert, Eric Singer, isn't he?
Eric Singer.
Spoke to him a bit.
He's amazing.
He's so great.
It's really interesting that the Mid-Atlantic accent would be something on your side of the pond, because over here we see that in the specs, and we think of it, of the Katharine Hepburn, of the really affected kind of.
I am smiling because you're right. That is a Mid-Atlantic accent. However, it's the Mid-Atlantic accent as it was in sort of the heyday of Hollywood, or whatever you might want to call it. Nowadays, I mean, this is what we kind of discovered as we went through this whole investigative process. The Mid-Atlantic accent now is, I mean, a genuine mix of an RP English accent and perhaps a general American. Sort of the accent that might transpire if you are from one of the places and then you live in the other place for a long time. A genuine natural blend of the two. And it's really useful for things like global companies who want to have a voiceover that you can't really tell where they're from exactly. You can't quite place it. They could be from anywhere, and a Mid-Atlantic accent kind of fits with that. But it means both. People get quite irate about it. It's one of our most listened to episodes of all time at this point, because people really have strong feelings.
As an accent coach, some of the people in the UK sometimes come to me wanting to learn it because they want to make themselves more globally acceptable in some kind of voiceover way. What's interesting as an accent coach is people come to me wanting to learn that in the UK. Someone from the UK will want to learn a Mid-Atlantic accent so they can be a little bit more globally acceptable on a voiceover from the voiceover perspective and get a bit more work. And it's different for everyone. So someone will come to me and they'll have a really RP accent, and we'll pepper in bits of American features to make that sound more like a mishmash. Someone comes to me with a different sort of English accent, and it's a very different thing. We have to put a bit of RP in and then maybe one thing from American. And it's about kind of like a pick and mix of, well, what feels right to you, because it's not really an accent in itself these days. It's different for everyone. And the reason it's different from everyone is not just from a speaker's perspective, that's also from a listener's perspective. So like the features that I pick up listening to to a Mid-Atlantic accent will sound very different to the ones you'll pick up, Cheryl, because you're listening through your, I want to say, ear lens.
Absolutely.
Your filter.
I was about to say that.
Your filter.
Yeah,
your
my
filter is
sure.
First and foremost someone who lives in America, whereas my filter is someone who lives in the UK. And that's what's interesting about those sorts of accents that are like hybrid accents, is that the opinion on any accent is in the ear of the listener. It's like almost nothing to do with us. I have no control over whether somebody thinks I sound Irish enough or not. And that comes up in my work as an Irish voiceover artist. Some people are like, oh, you're not as Irish as we thought you were going to be, or you don't sound the right kind of Irish, or you're too Irish. And it just depends on their experience of that accent.
Sure. And you said RP, and what?
That's something that we did another episode about, in fact, because RP, like the Mid-Atlantic accent, has changed over the years as to what people who need to use that term think it means. So RP stands for received pronunciation. Sometimes people call it the BBC English. Sometimes people call it the Queen's English. Sometimes people and then nowadays RP means something else altogether. But what we did with this episode is we spoke to the UK's most well-respected linguist about the history of. I mean, it's been developing over the last few hundred years. It's that old, this particular accent. And then we looked at what our listeners think RP is, and we had them all send in their versions of what they think it is, and Nic had a little listen to them, and we worked out what features were the same and what features were different to what people think RP might be or thought it was. But would you like to speak a little bit about RP, Nic?
I think you've done it, really. What I would say, though, again, is like RP was, in essence, initially a socially constructed accent. There was somebody picked all the features they thought were acceptable to be heard when somebody invented like the radio and broadcasting, basically. It was picked as the accent to represent what people in England sound like, educated, well-off people sounded like, i.e. people who could afford to buy a radio back then.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
It was like, well, the people who listen to the wireless, who can afford a wireless, which was the name for radio, will sound like this. And that this sound was an accent that an old Opposite Irish linguist had decided were the right sounds to put together for an accent to make it sound educated. Basically nothing from any of the quote-unquote regions. So he took out all the Cockney features and he took out all the West Country features and he took out all everything, and it was like, this is what people should sound like, and that's what RP became. But again, it's very different again now today.
So it's almost like an instituted, not repression, but like a prejudice. Like if you don't present yourself like that, you're not good enough in a social standing.
For the benefit of the listeners, Leah and I are both nodding very, very effusively.
Heavy nodding.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. It's like sound washing. I don't know if that's right. I'm really inventing terms
cleansing.
today.
Yeah, like almost like a audio cleansing of what someone should sound like if you're from this area.
And the results of which
dismal.
are still imbued in society today.
If we don't mind me going on about the exact same thing in different ways each time, we did an episode about that as well, which was a live episode called How to Book More Work in Your Native Accent, that was all about accent discrimination, which is an almost unavoidable side effect of the proliferation of RPs, that other accents feel sidelined and feel like they aren't good enough and they don't have a place, when in actual fact they do.
That's the perfect phrase, accent discrimination. That's perfect, because we experienced that here as well. I mean, if you travel around different regions, and if you hear a certain southern accent or you hear a certain northern accent, people immediately have this idea of who you are or who you are not, when in fact it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to who the person is.
Their opinions perpetuated by the media is what they are.
Yes.
That's a whole podcast in itself. Let me hold my beer. Let me tell you a little bit about the damage the media does to everybody's opinion. Another thing.
So you have your VO Social, you're recording your episodes, and then 2020 rolls around and COVID presents itself. So it obviously affects the way people gather, the fact that they can't gather. So what did you do? Did you go online virtually to have your meetups, or what did that look like?
We did do a couple. It just... there were some of, because we've got socials around the country. So there's VO Social Scotland, there's VO Social Hull, VO Social Newcastle, VO Social Bristol, and we've little exclusive is we're about to announce the arrival of VO Social Wales.
What?
And they don't belong to us. These are run like almost like franchises, but there's some of those are set up completely separately from us. But we just kind of absorb them and promote them as much as we can. But the reason why I mentioned that. Oh, what was the reason I mentioned that? Oh, yes, it's because some of them really did embrace the idea of going online. VO Social Scotland had a regular thing where they'd get an exciting guest to dial in and they'd talk about audiobooks or impressions or whatever it might be. And they were lovely. We did try it a couple of times, but the nature of our socials is so just relaxed and chatty and interactive that I don't know if it was just that I found it like excruciating that we didn't end up doing them very much. Or if it's because everybody else felt the same way, but I certainly did, and I didn't want to organise them.
But I think as well, I felt like we were still providing something from our community and keeping our community together because we were making the podcast. And I have a Facebook group called the Voice and Accent Hub, which is a Facebook group for voice and accent training for voiceovers and anybody who uses their voice, really. And I ploughed a lot into making that be a sense of community and sharing the podcast in there. And we have a Facebook group for the podcast and things like that. So we just felt like quite quickly there was a saturation of Zoom socials. And we were just like, you know what? Nah.
And you're right, actually, Nic, because we were still... the podcast just went mental over the pandemic, essentially. We were sort of gradually... There was a sort of gradual uptick in our listenership up till then, and then the pandemic hit and we just went...
exploded.
It was mad. Yeah, and the other thing that happened was we started making a big one a month and then a little one in the middle of the month, and then that kind of expanded into 2 reasonably sized podcast episodes a month, which is more than we'd done up until that point. We were just one big one a month until then. And that really helped us keep a connection going with everyone who was listening to the podcast and people that needed kind of cheering up and bolstering and jollying along. And that was kind of how we saw our role in terms of making people feel better about things.
We were just, I sort of feel like everybody who listens to the podcast feels that we're just talking with them anyway. Like it's like a tiny mini social in their ears.
Yes.
And I hope that we've not had anybody really be like, how dare you not do a social for us, which is really nice. No. And most people, when they listen to the podcast, I do think feel part of our conversation, which is for us is as valuable, if not more so, than everybody sitting on Zoom for an hour and a half with a warm gin and tonic, trying to like.
Oh God.
So how are you, John? How's it been going for you? Yeah.
Oh,
turn your camera on. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, babes.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. You're like,
yeah.
So that's how we approached it. Sanity first.
So, given you launched your podcast in October of 2015, and congratulations, that means 6 years. Woo woo.
Yes, gosh, oh my God, it's like an anniversary.
It is an anniversary.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had.
Yeah, we just passed our 6th
I don't know.
anniversary.
I don't have confetti. I have tissue to throw or something.
Snotty tissue.
Nobody's ever thrown used tissues at a camera screen to celebrate me before now.
Well, absolutely
this is quite the day,
hold
Cheryl.
on. I know we could do one. This should suffice. Hopefully, people can't see this and they're going, "What is going on? I'm missing out here."
Oh, look.
It's so flashing and magical.
Oh my God.
Flashing magical crown to celebrate your 6 years on the air.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Means a lot.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And I actually do feel very much a part of even though I'm over here in California, when I listen to your podcast, and I've started to listen to many more of them recently, I felt like part of it. I was like, I want to be there.
Yeah.
I want to party with them.
Oh, lovely.
You've covered every topic that a voice actor would be interested, from vocal warm-ups, what books to read, negotiating rates and usage, AI, how to quote for podcast work. And before I actually go on to the question about that, I didn't plan on this either, but podcast work, how to quote for podcast work, what does that mean for you?
So, it's actually a very difficult question to answer because in the episode, we did not manage to get to the point where we were able to go, okay, so if your podcast has this many listeners, then charge this much. If it goes out in these countries, charge this much. We weren't able to get to that point because it's such a growing and developing medium.
It's just a movable feast.
It's just
all the time.
It's just impossible to say. However, what we did manage to, I think, highlight in there is I don't know what it's like in America, but in the UK, there's this situation where radio commercial voiceovers don't get paid very much for what they do. It's basically a minimum was set a few decades ago with the intention, a minimum per
station.
Job, voiceover job. Yeah, with the idea that these travelling voiceovers who were going up and down the country in their cars doing loads and loads of voiceovers at a time, they would be paid bulk rates, and so even though one script is worth like practically nothing, it added up and it was okay. And so that minimum has then become the standard rate of pay for a radio commercial. And now, because people are working from home and there are many, many more voiceovers now than there ever were, that means that rate of pay has essentially, for what it's worth, vastly decreased. And so podcast commercials and idents and work within podcasts, voiceover work within podcasts, there's an unfortunate situation where some people use those radio commercial rates to work out how much to charge for what they're doing for podcasts, or people that are producing podcasts use them to work out how much to pay the voiceovers. And it's basically unacceptable because those rates are already wildly off the mark of what they should be. And so what we did I think manage to do in the podcast episode is say this is where you can work it, a BSF situation. It is not a £27.40 per script situation, which is what some people are ending up charging for some of the radio commercial work they're doing.
So that's what, about $30 US?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And then of course the other sort of work you get in podcasts that isn't commercial, like, and not even idents, like I've done a few wee bits of like acting jobs within podcasts that are fiction podcasts or like spoof podcasts, and that's ultimately at the mercy of what the creator's budget is. That's nothing to do with the listenership or anything like that. So if you've got an indie podcast, Like I've done some stuff for a comedy podcast over here called the Beef and Dairy Network. It's a great podcast, but it's an indie podcast, sort of. I think it's produced by somebody now, actually. Anyway, he only has a certain amount per episode to pay, and he pays really well considering what it is. But, you know, if I was to say to him, well, actually, I'll only do that for X amount, I wouldn't get that job. And then for me, it becomes a creative decision. Do I want to do that fun little job with that really nice person for that podcast I really like? Of course I do. You know, so there's, you know, so much to the medium, and it's constantly changing. So yeah, I'd say we'll probably revisit it at some point.
I think that's such a personal thing anyway. If we do work that we love and it's a passion project and we really admire the producer, that's not what your bread and butter is based on anyway. So, you know, I think we all make those decisions, and it kind of leads into, you know, what you talked about, not finishing that episode is, I'm curious if your content is from both being proactive to what you see trending in the market, or perhaps reactive.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's been a few instances
both
where we've decided we're going to do an episode on something, and then it's just sort of gone mad. Like, for example, when we did our first AI episode. It was over a year ago now, and people were talking about it, but not really. There was
nobody put their flag in the sand, had they? And like, right, let's investigate this. So we did,
and there was a talk at the One Voice conference. So this is, what was it, 2019? It must have been 2019. I don't know.
There wasn't one in 2020.
No, it must have been.
2021 was online.
It was online. Well, whatever it was that happened, I can't remember. There was so it must have been 2020 because it's 2021 now. In it, the speaker at the talk said that our entire industry was going to be changed beyond recognition within 3 to 5 years. And I nearly fell off my seat. And so we made a fuss about it in that episode, and then we followed it up with a huge investigation into where AI was actually at. So there was this video that came out of a voice called Faith, which was a character in a game, and it was an AI-generated voice that could cry. And I heard it, I was moved by it, I was a bit scared by it, and so we managed to track down the company that made this clip. And they took quite a lot of convincing until they talked to us, but they did in the end. They spoke to us about why they were doing it, how they were protecting actors' livelihoods, or at least trying, and being part of this transitional process while not destroying everybody. And then we also spoke to the woman who recorded the AI voice that was then used to generate this character, Faith. And then we spoke to Equity, the trade union here, about what we can do to protect our livelihoods and how we can perhaps embrace this new technology, because it's coming anyway, in a way that doesn't screw either ourselves or anybody else over. So it was this huge, big episode. And we put it out, and then suddenly, it wasn't because of us, but it was just because we were just riding the crest of the wave that we started seeing everybody talking about it. On all the Facebook forums, people were posting stuff. There was stuff happening on online magazines. And then in the last sort of few months, you'll have seen that everybody was making episodes. All the podcasts about voiceover were making episodes about AI. And it was quite extraordinary to see. And I'm glad that people are really taking notice and sort of getting educated about what the situation is. But that's an example of us just being ahead of the curve in a way that we didn't really expect. And it does happen with some of the others as well.
Being very proactive with that. And it's, you know, I've heard it say that any technology that we hear about, it's really 5 to 10 years, it's already been in the works. And by the time we hear about it, it's been fully implemented somewhere. So I think if we had an idea of the breadth of really how much it's advanced, even from the time you heard about it a year ago, it would probably scare us. I mean, really, I've seen some documentaries on some of the bots that they're using in China for a concierge, where you can walk up and have a full-blown conversation with a robot.
Amazing.
And it's pretty mind-boggling. But of course, any technology used in a proper way is fascinating, like how we're connecting. But when it's used, you know, like a brick, does it build a building or does it break a window? So it's just
nice analogy. I may steal that.
You can use that. You can use it. It's clear, Nic and Leah, that you both individually and collectively experienced great success in your careers. And in one of your recent episodes, you discussed imposter syndrome, which, by the way, I love that in the midst of that episode, you talked about how you snuck into the VIP party and totally crashed it, because I want to do that as well. So kudos. I feel like I don't have confetti again. I'm throwing the tissue. Can you share a time that you may have faced imposter syndrome yourself, or perhaps another type of fear, and what you did to move beyond it?
Do you have one spring into mind, Leah?
Yeah, you're one.
Oh, hers.
Sorry. We've known each other for so long now. We've got like banks of
which one?
anecdotes.
Start it off.
The one about when you were starting out as a teacher. As a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm so full of that story in my head that I haven't moved for any others.
I was a voiceover artist for about 10 years, and then I went back to uni to do a master's to train as a voice practitioner. And I had been an actor to that point, and then become a voiceover artist. So I'd always been in performance. And as a performer, it's your job to be a part of someone else's vision, take their direction, stand where they think you probably should. There's collaboration there, but you basically do what you're told for a living, right? And then I got obsessed with voice and went back to Central School of Speech and Drama in London to do this master's in voice. And all of a sudden, people were saying to me, you stand up there and you tell us what to do. And I was just like, I just could not, I found it so hard to embody that role, because my entire being up to this point was, right, what do you want? How do you see this happening? What do you want to happen? Yeah, these are my thoughts on the character, and should we think about that? But actually, how does that work with your vision? And everything up to that point had been me following someone's instruction. So I had to do this one little micro teach as part of the training, and it was just for 5 minutes to teach the class that I was training with, teach them something. And I was I can't even begin to tell you how nervous I was. I basically went home and scripted it word for word. And I was just going to tell people how to get down through a spine roll and then onto the floor in semi-supine to start doing some breath awareness work. And I scripted it word for word and performed it like a monologue. And then as soon as it ended, I burst into tears. Because the adrenaline, standing there and having everybody, and that was my first proper experience. You get it as an actor, but it's part of the job. Like you always feel a bit, you do the audition and you get it, you don't get it. There's always imposteriness around. It's kind of part of the job. It's how you get better, when you keep fighting. And I was trying to see imposter syndrome as a coach, as a superpower, because it constantly keeps me trying to make sure I know more and constantly updating my knowledge about the voice and vocal health and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, for me as a coach, there's a constant level of imposter syndrome, because there's always somebody now in my environment when I'm coaching who needs to know something from me. And that's, for me, where I get most of my imposteriness. That's not a word. Oh, damn.
Leah, you're going to write her later and say, what was up with imposteriousness?
What's imposteriousness? Yes. There weren't any apostrophes in it, so...
I have actually calmed down a lot about punctuation and grammar since meeting Nic. And it's not because, not caring about it is infectious, although that might also possibly be true. It's because she has opened my eyes to the fact that getting punctuation and grammar perfect and spelling perfect is irrelevant when it comes to actually communicating your feelings. The real problem lies in the way that nonsense is received. And if you're negative about someone because they haven't got that particular skill set, or they don't have the capacity to develop that particular skill set because maybe they have something in the way, maybe they're dyslexic, maybe they never had any inspiring teachers at school, or whatever it might be, however they learn differently. And as a result of that, I've tried to be a lot kinder and less of a...
I'm so proud of you, Leah. I'm so proud.
Thank you. I've properly absorbed it. I've absorbed it. I have.
This means to just be. That's
I love
what
this. Look at that.
This is
just be.
This is my amen to what you just said.
That is
so beautifully stated, really.
Cheryl, I think you need to describe exactly what you're wearing on your head just then, because I'm not sure everybody knows.
I have an assortment of little hats. We're recording on, we're speaking on camera, recording audio, but I have an assortment of little head adornments, and one of them is a little bee antler.
It's amazing.
Thing.
I'm excited to see what inspires the next headdress. Like what we say is going to inspire the next thing you put on your head.
Is it anybody's birthday?
Gosh.
Anybody's birthday?
Can I say that it is?
It's the birthday of our podcast,
yes,
nearly.
Yes.
Oh, we've done that already.
Oh, yes. It's the 6 and a bit
birthday
of the podcast.
Hey.
Happy birthday hat.
That's great.
I mean, that is a
this
lot
is amazing.
Of hats.
Studio goals.
Great. We are really letting the side down with our
hat box.
Studio. Hashtag studio goals.
Nic, I've seen the beautiful pictures of, don't laugh if it mispronounces, Bush Nuke Farm. Did I say it right?
Yeah, if you were in Lancashire, that would be brilliant. Bushnook.
Okay, so I am. I'll just say that I am.
It's perfect. Doesn't matter. Bushnook. Still know what you mean.
Bushnook Farm that you posted on Instagram and your ultimate voice getaway retreat.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about that and who can attend future events?
So I took the head staggers in lockdown and moved to the family. We have like a guest house. My parents run a guest house and it's called Bushnook Farmhouse and it's on the Cumbria.
It's in your family.
Yeah, it's my house.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
It's
that's where you live?
It's on the Cumbria, Northumberland, Scottish borders. So it's on this area called Hadrian's Wall, which is this big wall that this guy built once. It's very historical. It's amazing. And it's this like amazing, beautiful area just in the North Lakes, in the Lake District in the UK. And basically, I had always got this idea that maybe one day I could do like retreats and like have people there and, you know, help them with their voice a bit at my house because I really like having guests and like hosting and stuff anyway. And during lockdown, me and my husband moved here. We were like, sod this. And we moved there. Now we live here and it's all kind of Waltonsy and hilarious. My parents are here. Me and my husband and my son are here. My brother's here. He lives in a van. That's another story.
Wow.
But the main body of the...
Down by the river? Is he in a... maybe that's that's the big saying. He lives in a van down by the river. Anyway.
No, we're a hoedown. But he... so it's a big house. It sleeps 15 people. And Ultimate Voice Getaway is the first iteration of many retreats that I have planned where people come up for the weekend and hopefully week-longs in the future and we just do loads of glorious voice work. So I book a studio in Northumberland National Park with like views all the way to Scotland and we do lots of like breathing and working on the voice and voice training and exploring the holistic nature of voice training ultimately and how powerful it can be to hold yourself accountable and give yourself a time and a space that is just about your voice and you commit a bit of money to that and a bit of time away from your business and you just focus on your voice and the results of that are just really wonderfully powerful, you know, especially over the past 18 months. A lot of tension and anxiety has been held in the body and what I find is people come here and they breathe the fresh air and we go for walks and we do a bit of wild swimming and then we have a few drinks in the hot tub. There's 3 hot tubs here and a bar and then we spend the day doing like lots of glorious like massaging the tension out and breathing and making noises and primal sounds and we get sounding a bit arty now but basically it's about voice and finding your voice and getting the most out of it and it's designed really this retreat for any kind of professional voice user. So I've had the first one was all audiobook narrators. That was amazing. We did lots of lovely stuff and then the next one had a voiceover artist, a podcaster, a presenter coach, a voice teacher, and another voiceover artist. So like anyone who uses their voice really. And in the future, I've got lots of exciting collaborations coming up. So I've got, I don't want to say anything yet in case any of it doesn't happen, but there's like lots of different things we're going to do. And we're building a studio. We're converting one of the barns into a studio so I can have more specific voiceover retreats. And like, I'm sorry, I've gone on for a long time about Bushnook. I get very excited about it.
I asked you. No,
go to my website, nicredmanvoice.com. I can see. Yeah.
Now, is it open to anybody such as someone from the US who wanted to attend? It sounds exquisite. Absolutely.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I've had a couple of people from the US who wanted to come, but they couldn't get into the country over lockdown. So they're on the list and they're like, yeah, let me know and keep them updated. So I have a mailing list and if anybody wants to go on that, promise I won't annoy you. It's just 4 emails a day. I'm joking.
I thought you were going to say an hour. I was looking forward to your 4 emails an hour.
4 emails an hour. It's just me every 5 minutes reminding you to drink some water. No, I'll send the odd email with my podcast and but it's the way to get all the information about the retreats and stuff.
Lovely. So, and we're going to definitely direct people how to get a hold of both of you individually and collectively. And so I want to ask you, if you had to name or wanted to name one of your greatest accomplishments in your lives, what would they be?
Oh, God, that is a really difficult question to ask.
You don't have to answer.
I think, linked to imposter syndrome, I think one of my greatest achievements actually recently has been having the confidence to start the retreats, to be honest, to like feel that the work I have is valuable enough to bring people here for a good couple of days and really immerse them in it. Like, I'm really proud of myself for that. And I think I can own that in a way that's still humble and not be like, well, I can teach you loads of stuff for ages. You know, it's like that took a lot for me to do. You know, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and there aren't many places in the UK doing that. If the last person to do that, to hold a retreat themselves, was Kristen Linklater, who died recently, but she was like one of the super duper queens of the voice training world, and she has a whole centre teaching her method that's been developed over, you know, tens and tens and tens of years. And I was like, who do I think I am? You know, but actually, you know, there is a lot there. Like, yeah, so I'm proud of myself for that. If I can own that,
absolutely,
for a moment,
absolutely.
I think probably the podcast is the most straightforward answer that I can think of, because it was not a thing, and now, as after years of work, it is a thing. And the British Podcast Award nomination, actually,
that's huge.
It just blew my mind, because we were like this. We're just two of us. It's just a little two of us, and then we were up there with these incredibly important business podcasts produced by big important production companies
hilarious.
and very famous business people, and
we were like, hi. Do you remember when our logo flashed up on this massive screen at the awards?
Did you squeal?
And I look, my husband made our logo, and it looks like it's we love it. It's charming, and it's us. And he kept telling us to get a better, more professionally made logo. And then only when it flashed up on the screen and in all these like 6 really super duper logos from these dead fancy pants business podcasts, we were like, oh yeah, looks like we've potato printed it. Looks like we've potato printed our logo. And everyone's like, who let a child into the business category? And we're at the back like, yay!
I love that. I love that story. That is so encouraging. Really think about that. And congratulations. I mean, really, we talked about your awards at the beginning of this, and maybe just a line or two about how do you're the longest running, most listened to voiceover podcast in the UK. How do you think that's happened for you? Like, what do you attribute that to, besides just the dynamic people that you are and the content that you're providing? But is there a secret sauce, if you will?
I do think, like, plugging away at it for six years, you shouldn't sort of underestimate perhaps the value of that, because a lot of podcasts start and then 7 episodes later they start, or they start and then maybe a year or 2 passes and then the presenter goes off and does something else, or the producer goes off and does something else. But we've just sort of kept at it. And because what we're making, I guess, has grown and developed and got more interesting, perhaps more entertaining, more like useful as we went along, people know that they can kind of rely on the content. And so if you just keep doing that, I mean, I'm saying this, but there's always more that you can do to make yourself more recommendable and more findable and more engaging for new listeners. But I think that probably for us, it's making something that we think is like the podcast that we would really like to be listening to as working voiceovers, and then letting as many people know about it as they can for ages, every single month of every year. I think that may be
wonderful.
Maybe it.
Thank you. And we talked about your success, what you've overcome, and so I'd like to know, conversely, is there a less successful time that informed you of the next right step?
Everything we've done has been so successful. God, I just can't think of anything I've done.
All right, so I tell you what's happening with me right now is that I am, like, at 39 3/4, I am in the grip of a midlife crisis. It's the thing I think about when I wake up. It's the thing I think about when I go to sleep. I've been doing nicely with voiceover work and with the voiceover podcast. I love it. And I've been working in production for an audio drama company for a while, and that's amazing too. And I read the news on the local radio for the BBC, and that's all lovely. But all I ever wanted since I was a teeny tiny child was to be an actor. That's it. And after 20 years of getting a bit distracted by all the other stuff, the voiceover, the broadcasting, the podcasting, I've suddenly just like gone, oh no, quick, well, I was supposed to be doing something else. So that realisation is not that anything's been going particularly badly, it's just that I forgot what I was supposed to be doing, and I've suddenly remembered. And so now what I'm doing is clearing a bit of space for things to come in, doing more classes along the exact lines of what I want to do, working towards putting together something like a production of some kind in the new year, and making things happen that really are more focused on my true hopes and dreams. So I don't really answer your question, but it's definitely the thing that I'm thinking about the most at the moment.
Actually, you did answer the question. And Nic, I'd love to hear from you as well if you have something else you want.
I think, there's something about the word success that I think I struggle with in that particular question. or unsuccessful in the sense that when I was a toddler, I wanted to be on the West End doing musical theatre. That's what I wanted. And then I sort of got there and I was like, this doesn't feel like I thought it was gonna. And then I ended up in voiceover, and that was amazing. And there are people who may look at my small flurry in musical theatre and go, well, clearly she was unsuccessful, so she went to voiceover. But it wasn't unsuccessful. It was getting somewhere in the reality not living up to what you thought it was going to be for various different factors, and then just following another path that's presented. You know, voiceover presented itself very kind of accidentally. Someone was basically like, psst, you Irish, I need you, come over here, I'll give you £400. I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, that was fun. And I earned a week's wages. I'm going to investigate that. And then I kind of went off in that way. And I think there's a lot of people then who and I love voiceover, and I could and did make a career at it full time until I decided I wanted to also think about the voice coaching and the accent coaching side of it. And I know that weird thought that a lot of people have when you see voiceover as your coach, that they assume there's an assumption that the voiceover wasn't enough to help for that person to survive, so they then started to be a coach. But it's also, again, another decision where you kind of go, this is great and I'm doing this and I feel really fulfilled, but there's still something that's not quite, there's something missing for me. And that's where I went back to do the course to train for a very long, intense period about how to be a coach and study pedagogy and things. And then that came around. And alongside that, I used to be a stand-up comedian, and I loved stand-up, absolutely loved it, and I'll blow my trumpet, I was very good at it. And people paid me to do it. And I could, if I'd kept going, probably have been more of a full-time pro comedian. But something in life happened, I got knocked up, and I ended up having to just put that on the back burner for a bit, because my husband's a comedian and he is still a comedian now. And it's like, someone could look at, there might be people in the comedy circuit who are like, oh, where did Nic go? Oh, she must have given up because, you know, maybe she was unsuccessful. But what I get at the end of it, of those, like, that weird wiggly route to where I am now, is every single thing that I've done there has impacted the coach that I am today. You know, comedy is a huge part of my coaching. It helps me connect with people, helps people relax. It helps with breath support, you know, like in terms of laughter. And everything I've done before is made me who I am today. So I'm actually looking back, laughing, going, there's nothing I've done that's not been a success. I mean, actually, in some people's eyes, maybe there are bits that have been unsuccessful, but actually I don't think they have. So I don't know if I'm answering the question or not, if I've gone a bit too weird with this.
No. You absolutely answered the question, because success means something different for everybody. And I don't mean success as the pinnacle of success, that you've, you know, been the master of everything you've surveyed, because I do believe that our, you know, journey in air quotes, the steps that we take lead us to where we're at, and they are all bits of education that bring us to where we're at. And to be a coach, actually, and a really good one, such as you are, that takes a mastery of learning. You've learned your craft in voiceover. You've learned it enough that you can be competent in teaching it. So I understand what you touched upon, because there are some people who do teach because they can't do. But I don't look at a good coach that way. There was something you touched on earlier. You said you're a holistic teacher. You're a holistic coach for voiceover. I'm actually working with someone like that, and it's taken me a long time to find someone like that. And when you find them, you're like, oh, because they take the whole person into account. What's your life conditioning? What are the tapes you've been playing in your head? What is all the stuff that people have told you about what it means to be successful? So, but thank you for touching on that, because maybe there needs to be another word that I find other than successful. But so I thank you both for answering that. And I'd love to know that coming out of this time, and prayerfully we are coming out of this time of COVID and what it's meant for us, what makes you hopeful?
That we're still here. Not to be morbid, you know.
Yeah.
It's been tough for a lot of people. Personally, I've had a lot of other things to deal with this year that have been really, really hard. And COVID was on top of that, another layer. And from a personal perspective, I'm just really hopeful that I personally have overcome certain things and managed to build my business and my both voiceover and coaching to a point that is, more than I could ever have dreamed of during this particular period of what society's had to deal with. I think that gives me hope personally.
When is this episode coming out?
Probably a week from this Saturday.
A week from this Saturday. So that would be the 14th. There's a reason why I'm asking.
Whoa,
it's too soon still.
No.
Okay, never mind.
I can postpone it. Is there something you want to share?
No, well, I don't know. It depends if you want to postpone it till after the 1st of December. It's quite far away still. It'd be an extra week and a bit on top of...
So that's what's making you hopeful. Let's just say an undisclosed.
What's making me hopeful is, certainly for the new year, is something that we have come up with between me and Nic. We have developed this thing, and I can't say what it is because it's not. We're not properly telling everybody in the whole world until the next episode comes out on the 1st of December. But we have been looking towards the future. With a little group of voiceovers at all stages of their career, and working with them to develop something very exciting for award-winning voice. Yes, yeah, they are. God, really, really good. And working with them to develop something that is going to really help voiceovers pin down what they want and make it happen. And we're going to be talking about it a lot more on the episode that's out on the 1st of December. It's probably the episode I've been looking forward to the most for a very, very long time, because we've got some people in it that are just incredible visionaries. I've never met anybody quite like a lot of these people that we're involving in the episode, and I think that it's going to be maybe the most inspiring and progressive and supportive episode that we've ever made. So it's going to be really great. But unfortunately, because this is coming out about a week before that one, you're going to have to listen to the episode to find out what it actually is that I'm going on about. I've forgotten what you said.
That was a much better answer than mine, Leah. I was like, I'm just really hopeful because I worked really hard.
No. Yours was I'm really hopeful because I actually survived one of the crappiest times in living memory.
Yeah.
Crap on crap.
Yeah,
so that I think is an extremely valid response. Actually, Nic Redman.
There's no answer envy here. Both answers
no, you're right.
Are very, very valid. So,
have you got a hat for that? What's the hat for answer envy?
I don't, but I can share red with
nothing
you.
to put on my head.
Oh, look, a red teddy bear. Yeah, I've got bear envy.
Well, you've got bear envy. Well, I talk to him sometimes when I need someone to read copy to. Little red steps.
Lovely! That's a wonderful idea. Some people stick little pictures of their friends on their monitor, don't they? But what have you got? Nic?
I've got something. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, she's gone.
Uh-oh.
How far away is this thing? Is this for like projection jobs? I'm here at the... Oh, God!
What the heck is that?
While Cheryl has a small red teddy bear, what Nic has is a human size, like a head the size of a human, bright orange, cross-eyed, evil, smiling, fluffy fluff monster.
That looks like, what was the monster from is it Star Trek?
That is, hang on, I'll put him back.
The eyeballs are
close your
waggling
eyes, children, if you're listening.
That's,
close your eyes.
That's Mr. Whippy. It's the terrifying puppet from my husband's last comedy show, and it's in my office at the moment because his tours just ended, and he's like, we have to keep it in case they need it for some kind of future exhibition. Yeah, good luck, love. And I'm like, where is it going to live in my office now? Because it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yes.
You can't use that to point your copy to,
your
can
read?
you?
Yeah, well, to read children's books, whatever you're doing.
So that's Mr. Whippy, and if you're interested in that, look up The Delightful Sausage.
Oh gosh, horror stories.
That's his comedy show.
Nic and Leah, thank you so much. This has been such a delight, and I will say, unlike any other episode that I'll be releasing.
Also, we're very sorry.
And so grateful for that too. Really, really quite wonderful. And I look forward to the one day that I can come across the waters and meet you in person, and we can.
Oh yeah, come over.
Oh, that would be so wonderful. Nice.
I've really enjoyed this.
We would love that with all of our
wonderful.
hearts.
Thank you. I have as well, and thank you so much for your time, because I know it's now what.
7:30. Yeah,
and really appreciate your time and your energy and your knowledge and your humor. You two are just a bundle of joy, and I just want to just wrap you up and have you come over here. Is that in the works at all for you to come over here for?
Yeah,
okay.
But it is in the works.
Yeah,
we can talk about that, can't we? That's a very definite plan. I turned 40 this year, and Nic turns 38.
Your babies.
Which is a massive milestone.
Now, when you say this year, when's your birthday?
So we're going to 2022. So we are planning for September a trip to New York. We're going to meet up with the voice actors of New York, hopefully while we're there, and generally eat all of the food, all of it. All of the delicious New York food. I need like things involving salt beef sandwiches, pizza that is the same size as my arm. What else?
Big pizza.
Sushi, cocktails, things like whatever the new Cronuts is. I want to try that.
Schmo nuts.
Oh, a schmo nut. Oh, I'm into it.
I made it up.
Like something with like a cronut with schmear on it, or schmaltz.
Po nut.
Fried
pizza,
in schmaltz.
donut.
Oh yeah. What's it? Pizza donut. What is all of the things together? Pishmo cronut.
Anyway,
yes, I'll have all of them. All of them.
So yeah, we'll be in America next year.
Yes.
It's whether we'll be on the right part of America,
and if we're not,
whether you can get to our bit of America.
That we're in, then we will, of course, be making a whole episode to gather together all of our experiences of the lovely New York into one thing. So September, October next year. That's when you're here.
So our listeners can plan for that right now, right? Just get your trip.
Right.
Look out, September, kids. We're coming for a party. Hey-o. Bring us food. Bring us all the American food.
We'll bring you the king bread.
All of it.
You know, you could.
Oh no!
Oh my God!
Oh, no.
I want to choke on that baby. Oh, hang on. Oh God! Just stop recording now.
Thank you again so much. God bless you guys. Continued success, and leave some awards for the rest of the folks, will you? Seriously, look forward to what your announcement is on December 1st. Please tell us how we can get a hold of you. I will have it in the show notes, but let folks know how they can get a hold of you collectively and individually.
Well, collectively, the website is thevosocial.com and the Twitter is @thevosocial. And then if you want to get me, I like leahmarks.co.uk, but you could just go get me through the Voiceover Social podcast.
And anything you want from me is on my website, nicredmanvoice.com.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Including my other podcast, the Voice Coach Podcast.
Oh yes, we didn't even mention your other podcast. Nic's other podcast is brilliant. It's called the Voice Coach Podcast, and it's like having a little miniature voice coach in your pocket, and it's like 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes episodes on all the different things that everybody needs to know, including specifically voiceovers and just voice users, and it's very, very good. It's been extremely well reviewed, so you can get that through her website as well, the Voice Coach Podcast. Free, high quality coaching that costs no money.
Thank you, my publicist, Leah.
Well, and I do appreciate you mentioning that, because I did mention it in your introduction, but we didn't talk about it. But now we have Leah as your mouthpiece, so to speak, and she did mention it.
She's great. She's my favourite mouthpiece.
Yes.
All right. And as you would say, cheers. Yes?
Cheers. Cheerio.
Tip top. Top of the morning.
What? Tip top.
There's a very, very specific way that people sign off phone calls in Ireland, which is that people find it really hard to stop talking.
So they just hang up.
They just go like, goodbye, 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 good luck, good luck, good luck, good luck, good luck, goodbye, bye, right, right, goodbye, 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 good luck, good luck, good luck, and then somebody at some point puts the phone down. Goodbye, goodbye, yeah, goodbye, good luck, good luck,
goodbye, down.
So we'll make it easy. On the count of 3, we'll just say 1, 2, 3. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye,
goodbye,
goodbye,
goodbye,
goodbye, goodbye, good luck, good luck, good luck, goodbye, 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 goodbye.
I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic. BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the Group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at CherylHollingVO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
dangerous. Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.